Thank you. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the Community Enhancing Application webinar. My name is Maria Linares, and I serve as the Business Initiatives Manager at Orange County Business Council. OCBC serves as the regional convener for the California Jobs First initiative in Orange County, bringing together key stakeholders to drive inclusive economic development. I'm joined today by Dr. Wallace Walrod, OCBC's Chief Economic Advisor, and Natalie Nguyen with Charitable Ventures, who serves as the fiscal agent for California Jobs First in the Orange County region. And then later, Jesse Benron, OCBC's Vice President of Business Initiatives, will be joining us for the Q&A portion. I'll go to the next slide. So in today's session, we're going to walk you through everything that you need to know about this funding opportunity, what it is, who it's for, and how you can apply for funding to support community enhancing projects in Orange County specifically. We'll cover the California Jobs First objectives, the different phases of funding, what kinds of industries and projects qualify, the scoring criteria and application process, and then we'll go over key deadlines, also available resources, and information about grant mentorship support to help you submit the strongest possible application. And of course, we'll leave time for questions so you can walk away feeling confident about your next steps. So I welcome you to add your questions in the Q&A portion of the webinar after the presentation. So if you could hold your questions until after the presentation, you'll also have an opportunity to come off mute if you prefer to ask your question that way. We will be sharing this presentation deck after the webinar, so expect an email from me today within a few hours. The webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to our Jobs First webpage in the next few days. And then friendly reminder too that we won't be covering or answering questions about the job creating application. That webinar for that project category uploaded to our webpage very soon. But if you would like for me to send you the link, it's already on our YouTube. Email me at jobsfirst@ocbc.org and I'm happy to send it to you. And then also another reminder that these webinars are optional. They're not a requirement to apply for Catalyst funding. Now, with that being said, we'll move on to the next slide to go over the California Jobs First objectives.
Maria, your video, it was like buffering for a bit, so your audio got a little sped up, but I think we captured most of it. But if you don't mind repeating the last maybe 30 seconds you spoke, I think there was an audio issue.
Okay, Dr. Walrod, did you have an audio issue on your end too?
I did have a little bit, yeah, but it actually captured it. I think eventually, so maybe just
okay. Okay, I'll move on to the next slide.
Yeah,
Basically just said that the webinar is recorded. You'll all have access to it. So not to worry, you can email me and I'll send it to you directly. Okay, so I'll go to the next slide. So what's the big picture with California Jobs First? So at the core of this initiative, we have three main priorities. Number one is to promote equitable and sustainable economic development. Two is to support inclusive economic planning with the focus on good paying jobs. The economic planning has primarily already been done. And then number three is to align and leverage federal and state funding to build long-term economic resilience. So basically, we're here to make sure economic growth is intentional, inclusive, and sustainable, and not just growth for the sake of growth. There are two sources of funding to help fund projects and activities in Orange County: implementation and catalyst funding. Implementation funding totals $150 million over 3 years, with about $50 million available each year for projects. So it is a competitive process, as Orange County will be competing with 12 other regions in the state. Projects must get approval from the regional collaborative before the state can consider them for funding. And a list of our regional collaborative members lives on our Jobs First webpage. We have many sectors represented there. The regional collaborative will ensure projects align with local needs, strategies, and targeted industry clusters identified in the regional plant part 2. And the Orange County Business Council will prioritize projects that focus on these clusters and attract new investment dollars to specific initiatives. And Natalie will be dropping the regional plant part 2 link in the chat. The first round of funding applications is scheduled to open in 2025 at some point in the next few weeks to few months. So as soon as the state releases their RFP, we will make sure that we push that out. And then important note that I want to mention, projects must be implementation ready for the implementation funding. Catalyst funding is why we're all here. Catalyst funding is already available. We're currently in the first round of applications. The purpose of the funding is to support activities that advance projects to become implementation ready. We will not fund projects that are asking for implementation funding. So projects must be physically located in or significantly involve Orange County residents, significantly benefit disinvested communities, and aligned with industries and or strategies outlined in the Jobs First Regional Plan Part 2. So please don't send in implementation ready projects as they will probably not be scored. Please do take a look at the pre-development activities document as that provides the list that you need. And then as you can see, following the timeline, the NOFA was already released. We are now at the third and final webinar. Applications are due March 14, 2025. Approximate award notifications will be on April 11th. Again, that's an approximate date. And then activities must be completed by September 30, 2025. $900,000 will be spent on activities for projects that address any topics in the Regional Plan Part 2 and or industries not mentioned in the job creating project section. So although not exhaustive, these would be topics such as housing, healthcare access, green technologies, childcare, and climate adaptation. For projects that are not primarily climate focused, stronger projects demonstrate a positive impact on the climate. The industries mentioned in the job creating project category, which was again the webinar we held on Wednesday, are tourism and outdoor recreation, medtech, high-tech hardware, semiconductors and microelectronics, advanced manufacturing, precision manufacturing, healthcare, childcare, education, and construction. And that's also all in the Regional Plan Part 2, and you can also find that in the NOFA packet. So in short, community enhancing projects focus on quality of life improvements such as housing and environmental sustainability, or projects that create good paying jobs in non-priority industries. So please take a look at page 10 and 11.
Dr. Rod, you don't see Maria's camera audio, right?
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
frozen.
Okay. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody. Just give us a second here as we figure it out.
Let me text Maria.
Sorry, guys, we lost Maria. I think she's gonna get connected to us soon, so just hold on.
Yeah, we have plenty of time.
Internet went down, but it must be a Cox thing. So I apologize. I will have to start screen share again. Just give me 1 minute. Bear with me, please. Okay, so we were getting started with the project phases. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I will share screen. Okay, so Natalie and Dr. Walrod, can you see the project phases presentation slide?
Yes.
Okay,
can.
perfect. Thank you. Thank you everyone for being patient and understanding. I tried switching to mobile hotspot. That wasn't working, so eventually Cox came back on. Great. Okay, so the project phases in the NOFA packet outlines the 3 distinct stages within the Catalyst pre-development phase. So we have concept, accelerator, and last mile. Each phase represents a different level of project readiness and then funding recommendations, which ensures that projects at different stages of development have access to appropriate financial support. So let's start with the concept phase. This phase is the earliest stage of a project where an idea is still being explored and developed. At this stage, key foundational elements are still being worked out. This phase may involve clarifying what the project aims to achieve, conducting research, etc., developing a business plan or a strategic plan, engaging stakeholders, and then consulting with experts, community members, or potential partners to refine the approach. And then we have the accelerator phase, which is the middle stage of a project's development where significant progress has already been made, but more work is still needed before reaching that last mile. So at this stage, the project has moved beyond the concept phase and is actively being developed, but it's not yet fully ready for execution. So some key characteristics of the accelerate phase may include some foundational work is complete, research has been conducted, partnerships may be forming, and a business or strategic plan is likely already in place. And then some initial steps, such as securing funding or conducting pilot programs, may have already started. And then the last phase is the last mile phase. And with this one, you're nearly ready for implementation, where most of the work is complete and only a few remaining steps are needed to launch or finalize the project. This phase is typically the most expensive because it involves critical finishing touches that make the project fully operational. So some of the hurdles could include obtaining permits, securing final funding, finalizing legal agreements, or completing infrastructure. There is no requirement that projects fit neatly into each category, and there are no strict funding limits. However, to allow for fair comparisons, we recommend using these three phases as a guide, which you will also find in the NOFO packet on page 6 and 7. And then with the last mile, exceptions exist, but if you're seeking last mile funding, you're most competitive at around the $750,000 range. And this phase is about closing the gap between preparation and execution, ensuring all final requirements are meant to launch the project successfully. And scoring criteria, there are a total of 5 project scoring criteria categories. We will begin with project impact and equity, which are the biggest scoring categories at 30 points each. The focus of this work has been on impact and equity, with a lot of it revolving around economic equity, because as we know, people in Orange County are struggling, and that's why the goal is to be a lot more intentional in supporting those who haven't always benefited from economic growth. When you look at the application, pay attention to what the broader project is, what the project will achieve, and how the activities will be executed. And we really designed the application to be as simple and as straightforward as possible. I look at the application when I compare it to other grant applications, and I think it's like one of the easier applications to fill out. And then also when filling it out, please ensure you reference the pages and sections from the Regional Plan Part 2 in your response. Now, the work plan is worth 20 points and focuses on pre-development activities and specific tactics with a timeline needed to move toward implementation and then help the project come to life. So this is where you'll want to talk about assigned roles for key staff, project partners, and potential consultants. It is important to distinguish between the overall project, its goals and expected outcomes, and then the pre-development steps required to move forward. So for example, securing legal paperwork or city permits are pre-development activities, and these steps are critical because they determine how funding will be used. And the fourth one, the organizational qualifications category, that's worth 10 points. We didn't want smaller organizations to be at a disadvantage, but we still needed to ensure that if they are awarded, they have the capacity to execute their projects. So in this section, you will include relevant experience and then outline specific past projects and outcomes. And then the last one is proposed budget and budget narrative, worth 10 points. So we understand that some of this work may need to be subcontracted, especially if it's highly technical. So just please ensure that it is clearly outlined in both the work plan and the budget narrative. You will need to provide a detailed budget that itemizes costs by category, such as personnel, materials, travel, subcontractors, etc. And you can find the budget template and budget narrative document on our Jobs First webpage, but Natalie will also drop it in the link. And then the scoring criteria can be found on pages 14 and 15 in the NOFO packet. So I'm quickly going to stop screen sharing for a moment just so I can temporarily move away from the presentation and then go to the Orange County Census map. So just give me 1 minute. Okay, so I had mentioned earlier that equity is a key focus of this initiative. So when looking at this map, you'll see different demographic distributions. And then we mentioned in the NOFO packet and application that the key maps to focus on for equity are maps 2, 3, and 4. So you'll see the drop-down menu here, and you'll go to either map 2, 3, or 4. So that's where you'll focus. And that's where you'll find the lower income areas, designated disadvantaged areas, and then areas of intersect. So if you're working with Native American or Indigenous communities, just know that they automatically qualify as disinvested community regardless of location. They do need to be in Orange County, but they don't need to be in one of those census tracts. And then for all other communities, qualification is based on census tract data. So you can see that the map allows you to zoom in. I can go to map 2 and then zoom in here and see the areas that represent disinvested communities. So you see all the different colors which are marked in green, blue, or purple. We also mentioned that in the NOFO packet. So if your project is a physical development, consider the location. And then if it's a service-based project, think about whether it benefits residents in those areas. And then for equity scoring purposes, projects in gray areas such as like Los Alamitos or Yorba Linda, etc., they are going to score lower. But if your project benefits or is located in areas like Garden Grove, Stanton, Anaheim, or Santa Ana, where disinvested communities are concentrated, it'll receive a higher equity score. Now, if you feel like your project isn't really census tract centered, please take a look at the NOFO packet and then find the glossary section, and then look at the disinvested community definition. You'll find a list of what the state considers to be disinvested. So now before we move into questions, let's briefly review the application together. So I'm going to pop that open for all of you, and it should be showing you the application.
Yes.
Awesome. So we kept it at a 10-page limit to make the process easier for applicants. So the goal really is to keep it accessible and not make things so complicated that good projects are left out. The application consists of 5 main questions with the 10-page limit. So the first one is project phase. So you'll select one: concept, accelerate, or last mile. So you just type your one-word answer here. And then I provided examples earlier in the presentation. This is a one-word answer, like I said, so it's just, pretty basic. And then if you're unsure, you can reach out to us via the Jobs First email for guidance, and then I'll respond to you. And then project impact, you'll describe what your project will do, who it will benefit, and how it will be executed. You'll then move on to equity. So you'll reference the maps to demonstrate that your project benefits disinvested communities. This portion is worth 24 points, and then an additional 6 points out of 30 is assessing whether the community actually wants this project. So can you provide evidence or feedback showing demand? Have you engaged the community to ensure this is something that they need? You'll then move on to work plan. Here you'll focus on pre-development activities. You'll clearly outline what's being funded and any potential supplemental funding to ensure long-term sustainability. We don't want projects to stall in the pre-development phase with no path to implementation. And then org qualifications and budget, that'll be number 5 and 6. So these are required, but they don't count toward the 10-page limit. So the budget narrative and template are provided separately and can be found on our Jobs First webpage. And then, of course, one letter of reference is required and doesn't count toward the page limit. It can be addressed to Orange County Business Council, and you'll find more information on page 13 of the NOFO packet regarding references. There needs to be some narrative, a paragraph or two referencing your ability to deliver and speaking to your character. There are no restrictions, and it doesn't need to come from a specific entity either, but it does need to be a third-party validator, and it should not be someone that is getting funding out of this. So in total, the application includes 5 key questions with 10 pages. With the straightforward process to keep. I can go back to the presentation. Oh, actually, I don't need to stop screen share. Awesome. Okay. And can you all hear me? Because it just popped up a window that said your connection is unstable.
We can hear you. Right.
Awesome. Okay. Keep your fingers crossed. Okay, so the link to the Regional Investment Initiative informational webinar was hosted February 7th. That's embedded within the slide. That just gives you an overall view of California Jobs First, and then Regional Investment Initiative and how we got to where we are today. So please watch that if you have any questions regarding that. The job creating application webinar was hosted February 19th and is also embedded within the slide. Again, we're not answering questions about job creating applications today. And then we'll go to next step. So Catalyst application materials can be found on our webpage under the NOFO section, and they close on March 14, 2025 by 11:59 p.m. They must be submitted to jobsfirst@ocbc.org. And really important reminder that incomplete applications will not be eligible, and proposals received after the deadline will not be reviewed. So I highly encourage you to turn them in early if possible. We also want to announce that we have grant writing mentors available to assist you. You are welcome to request up to 5 hours of mentorship by emailing jobsfirst@ocbc.org. And then one important piece to share is that the mentors will guide you on how to write a strong application, but they're not going to write the application for you. And then information about Catalyst funding will continue to be released through our newsletters. If you would like to be added to the constant contact list, which I manage, please send me an email at jobsfirst@ocbc.org. And then if anything in our NOFO is not clear, we also have a Q&A portion on our webpage and an FAQ document. Answers submitted to me at the jobsfirst@ocbc.org email. They're all updated weekly on our page while the application window remains open. So Natalie, if you could drop in the chat the Q&A link. Just please take a look at that. Questions that you may have, maybe somebody else already asked and they've already been answered. I also incorporated questions from the job creating webinar in there. So I believe that's already been updated as of this morning on our webpage. So please take a look at that. And that was a lot of information. I definitely need to get some water. So I'm sure you're all ready to move to the Q&A portion. So we'll go into Q&A and I'll stop screen share. Dr. Walrod and Natalie and I will be answering your questions. So this is our contact information. I'll stop screen share now and we'll go into Q&A.
Maria, I've been answering some of the questions, but for the remaining ones, please raise your hand and ask your question.
Okay, I don't see hands raised yet.
The one from Stephanie is, did you say the organizational qualifications doesn't count toward the page limit? I think it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I'm sorry if it was confusing. So it's the budget narrative and then the budget template. Those don't count towards the 10-page limit, and neither does the reference letter.
So there's one more,
Okay.
but I would encourage you to raise your hand and ask that question live.
Okay, so I'm bringing Jessica in. Hi, Jessica. Welcome back.
Hi, Maria. Thank you. My understanding is this is a reimbursement grant. And my question is there any opportunity for like an advance payment of maybe 25% of the award for upfront funding, or is it a very strict only reimbursement?
Natalie, would you like to chime in regarding the reimbursement question?
Yeah, gladly. So advance payments can be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, depending on the project. So project reimbursement structures can be based on a payment schedule, or it could be based on a cost reimbursement, whatever expenses incurred in whatever given month, reported the month after, reimbursed later. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and then if you can select the answer live, I see that somebody asked about who's gonna review the proposals. So for the community enhancing projects, there will be an optional in-person meeting so that they can review applications. And when I say they, I mean the collaborative, the California Jobs First collaborative members. And then we'll launch an online poll to finalize decisions. And then the results will be reviewed at the public March 28th collaborative meeting. Our Zoom meeting information is accessible on our website. And then adjustments such as partial funding to increase recipients can be made if needed. And then for the job creating projects, the regional convener, along with sector investment coordinators, will propose a preliminary list. So there are some steps internally that we're taking regarding reviewing the applications. Okay, and then what is the start date of the funding? I know we would get notified in April, so is it as of May 1st start date? Natalie?
Hi there, sorry. So the start date of the funding would be dependent on when we receive all requirements related to contracting available to us. So if with the notification date in April, May would be a good time to expect a fully executed contract and work to begin. Hope that answers your question. Maria, there's a few questions in the answered section. I was hoping you would get to. Dr. Rowe said, please ask the question after Maria has finished presenting the slides. An anonymous attendee asked, are there any items not allowed on the budget besides activities that do not fall in pre-development category?
And that's in the answered section?
Yeah, it's in the answered section.
Okay, but I believe that was answered already, correct?
I believe so. I'm gonna just go ahead and mark that as answered here.
Anything that's answered, Dr. Walrod probably already got to, and I fully trust anything that he responded to.
Okay, sounds good. Just another one from the anonymous attendee. Dr. Rowett had responded, please ask the question after Maria has finished the presentation. Is the anonymous attendee asked, could the project be done in 12 months or does it have to extend to the full 17 months until September 30th, 2026?
Can be 12 months.
Yeah,
Mhm.
when we
Okay.
discussed,
I
oh, go ahead,
just
Dr.
answered
Walrod.
that. The person posted that again, so I just answered it in the Q&A.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I see someone said, I don't currently have access to the glossary on both Wednesday and today. The terms Native American and Indigenous were used. How are we to interpret Indigenous? Does Indigenous mean, for example, Mexican, given the region was previously Mexico? Thanks for clarifying this point. Dr. Walrod or Jesse, would you like to answer that? Welcome, Jesse.
Hi, Jesse.
Sure. Yeah, the language the state likes to use is California Native American tribes, but I know even that is contestable. We just want to be inclusive to probably that intent of native peoples to the land.
Thank you, Jesse. Okay, next one. Alice, sorry. The NOFO mentioned that there will be future rounds of Catalyst funding. Do you know when the next round will be available, and will it entail both the job creating and community enhancing opportunities? So we will have a round 2. We're planning, again, it's tentative dates, summer 2025. And I like to say sometime midsummer, early fall, because things can change, especially with the state. And the next, and third and final round of funding would be Early 2026. But correct me if I'm wrong, Jesse.
Yeah, no, yes, if we can do the last round earlier, we will. It's about how quickly we can, get through this process and launch the next one. There shouldn't be much difference between the different ones, but yes, but we would like to do it. If we can do it faster for all of you, we will.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, the other question, anonymous attendee. How stringent is the criterion of preferred industry? Could you please explain the requirement on industry?
So it's for me.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Vary. I mean, since if it's reasonable when you try to say that this is healthcare, yes, like in that sense. But no, like if you're gonna take, not where you might like what is like not on the preferred list. I think like maybe construction isn't, or maybe it could be. But so if you take like an industry that isn't really at all, and you say that it's healthcare, then no, we're not going to accept that. But we understand that there's always gray area in what some of these can mean. So that's, I guess that'd be the definition. So long as it can reasonably be within those 10, we'll accept it. However, if it's not within those 10, it has to be a community enhancing application.
Great.
And even
And then
those
also,
even those would be, it would probably boost your score if it was something having to do with something like childcare, education, or healthcare that is called out in the priority sectors.
and then also know that you all can come off mute if you'd like. So just raise your virtual hand, please, and we'll bring you over to be able to ask your question live. Okay, and then Jessica asked if we want to do a feasibility study and then site selection and planning for a child care center, should we apply under concept or accelerator? Jesse, we were actually talking about this a little bit yesterday. Could you answer that question for Jessica?
Yeah, I think basically this is some of it must be all three of us kind of have to put our heads together in some of it. So some of it if we're kind of having a meeting. So like that's kind of the point of these. I think these ask good questions. I think we are open to moving projects along as much as possible. Right. So it's like if it was initial all the way through as much as possible, assuming that the steps are there. So just in some ways, I guess I'm open to say like it can kind of be a little bit of both. If you feel like, right, like that $50,000, even though it's a recommendation allotment, can only get you so far, and you already have the steps in place or have done the legwork to do some of those other things, then you can kind of apply for an extra slot of funding and then add that as well to the recommended list. I think this is where there are no bright lines, but we are open to, if it's a really good project and we can, hypothetically fund it all the way through, we will. Again, it really depends on the strength of the other applications, but we don't necessarily want to limit somebody to say, sorry, like the most you're going to get is 50,000. If you've done the legwork, you've gotten the consultants, you have the plan, and it's a great idea and it's impactful and equitable, and the collaborative wants to, they can fund, as much of it through that kind of pipeline as possible. If you have further questions, just because that's like very probably unique to your project, let's take that offline. Feel free to reach out.
And I do tend to respond same day or within 24 hours. So if you all have questions, remember, just email us at jobsfirst@ocbc.org. And the next question is, can you explain who is the financial sponsor agent? A needed field in the cover letter question mark. Can that be the business owner, for example? Jesse?
Throw in a little bit to Natalie here. Not all projects will need a fiscal sponsor. So you could just be no. Maybe even most projects won't need a fiscal sponsor. It's really about the state of the organization. Charitable Ventures, who's a fiscal sponsor for most, maybe you can kind of generally answer who those institutions usually are.
Yeah, for that part in the letter, if it doesn't apply, it's not necessary to fill out. If you're applying as an organization that is not fiscally sponsored, that section is non-applicable to you.
Just put not
Answer your question.
applicable. Yeah,
Yeah.
just put not.
Yes, and maybe another way to say, if you don't have a fiscal sponsor, it doesn't mean you're disqualified. Yeah, it doesn't need to have one to apply.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? Type it in the Q&A. You can come off mute. Okay, one more. If the tiers are the same, given that the community enhancement portion of the funding is 900,000, then theoretically one project could take 750K and the rest of the applicants will compete for the remaining 200K. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, that is hypothetically possible. That is going to be the prerogative of the collaborative on again, how many projects they want to fund, where it's at and whatnot, but hypothetically that's possible.
Okay. Regarding organizational qualifications, should we bring someone with retail's experience? Is that essential to boost our chances?
I think without knowing more about the project, that's a difficult question to answer. So please reach out to us offline.
And then Jessica, describe how residents of disinvested communities have expressed a need for this project or how they will be engaged in the project planning and design, which is worth 6 points. Please give examples of this task.
Want to go for that one, Maria, or do you want me to go?
You can go, but I would imagine it would be anything like research that they've done or community feedback, right? Like maybe hosting forums.
Yeah, I mean, if there's ever been, and you don't even have to do the kind of the research or the outreach yourself. If there's other organizations and you've seen their documentation that they've said that there are, residents need this or that, that could serve as it. You could absolutely do it yourself. The point is that there needs to be some proof that there was some interest from the community that you're trying to serve with this, that they kind of want the project and it's kind of not being done to them. If not, then what is the mechanism during hypothetically pre-development that you could hypothetically use some of the funding for this to be able to do that, to ensure that so once you get to implementation, you kind of have that proof from the community that this is what they want. So it could be some of your thing like a forum, focus group, what have you, but it could be leverage. There's plenty of documents in the community. There's plenty of outreach and community needs assessments that you could leverage to say, this community needs assessment says we need this, and that's what my project delivers.
Okay, next one, Alice. Apologies if I missed this, but for the implementation opportunity, when do you anticipate that NOFO to come out and what would be the project timeline, 3-year project? So from what we heard from the state, anywhere in the next few weeks to few months. But we heard that in the past, so we're kind of just waiting, and then once it's out, we push it out immediately. So one thing we're really good at OCBC is communication with the general public and our stakeholders, so we'll push it out. I don't know about the timeline though, Jesse or Dr. Walbright.
Yeah, I mean that's all in the state's hands. So also we have no insight. Yeah, I would just say we have no insight. Originally, a lot of this money was supposed to be spent by September 2026, which is why the NOFO that we're working with has that timeline. But the state has a lot more authority in changing that for themselves if they can kind of do that statutorily. So it's a long way to say, like, it's really all at the state level, and we'll push it out and we'll have to read what they read and help you interpret it as well. I know we had Lulu has had his or her hand up. So Lulu, I took you off. If you could, you have the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, hi, Jesse and Maria. Thank you so much for this and for everyone. In the last webinar 2 days ago, Jesse, I think you talked about how many applications you're expecting, like just based on the interest that you've received. Could we have a similar estimate for this, for the community enhancement? I think you were saying something for the job creating one, you said it was more between 50 and 100, under 300 applications, more or less. Is it the same for the community enhancement?
That answer was inclusive of both types.
Oh, for both. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't separate between what we don't have much insight, as I mentioned. And so for the other call, we did try to launch a survey to get a sense of what projects could be out there. That was completely voluntary. And so now that there's real dollars on the table, I'm sure people are more interested in kind of doing the work instead of just kind of voluntarily submitting a project. So that was kind of just an estimate, but it did include both types of projects.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lulu. Another question. Nowadays, people don't talk on the phone. They rather do text, email, Snapchat. How will you verify the letter of reference or MOU or whatever things you need to verify for the application? Natalie, can you answer that question, please?
Yeah, happy to. So to verify the letter of reference, I think that's programmatic, but MOU would just have to be signed by all parties that are identified as partners for whatever application that's being applied for. But I'll pass it over to either you or Jesse or Dr. Wara to answer on the letter of reference.
Oh, then I believe we are asking for email. So I totally with you on that. I'm more of a text-based person myself. I think it provides more flexibility. So I believe we are asking for email in case that is a preferred method. Yeah, I don't think we're going to use social media as a way to reach out, but I think it's phone number and email is the primary way we're going to try to get a hold of people.
And there's another question, Natalie, be ready. This might be for you. This question was not answered. Are there any items not allowed on the budget besides activities that do not fall in pre-development category?
Yeah, happy to answer. The discretion is up to the state. In the contract that'll be drafted, there'll be a short list of what are items that are disallowed. Item costs that are disallowed are lobbying, fees, and fees related to attorneys and any debts paid back. But if it is directly related to the program, it is fair game. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and we can review any costs that you're afraid may not be considered allowable or not. Hope that answers the question.
Would it be okay to include a 1-minute video with the application? I would say no, but Jesse, correct me. That's not in the NOFO packet. And then I would also ask 1-minute video regarding what? Like answering what question? So if you could elaborate, Fernando, that'd be great.
If Fernando, would you just prefer to raise your hand and then we can move you to? I mean, I would say like I guess you could submit it as an additional, but we still need the narrative all the same. So no, a 1-minute video application would not replace the writing of the narrative in both budget and in project. If you want it, we will always accept additional documentation or items, but you still need to complete as was stated in the NOFO. And if you have trouble writing, that's not everyone's forte. This is why I think, as Maria mentioned, we have those grant writing mentors. They can review and edit and put you in a good place. We understand writing's not for everybody, so we want to provide the necessary support so you're comfortable in this process. And yeah, absolutely. If you want to add it as additional, but we still need the narrative. So that would work as a visual highlight, no problem.
The next one is, what's the percentage you approved? Say you received 200 applications, how many usually got grant funded from you? So this is the first time that we're doing this. This is round 1 of this funding, but I'll let Jesse answer that.
Nope. You said this is our first time. We will fund until the dollars are exhausted. In this case, this is the collaborative's decision. So Maria had a webinar probably explaining kind of the collaborative. It's also on the website with the NOFO. They're going to have to decide essentially how many projects they want to fund, given the strength of the project, the dollar amount asked. They have to kind of negotiate and navigate those things. It could be 10 applications. It could be, like someone stated, hypothetically 1 or 2. We don't know. It's about the strength of the applications, the dollar amount being asked, and what the collaborative thinks is the most important way and best way to spend the money. Yes, Taylor's question.
Okay.
Actually,
okay, yeah. So the yes to that was, will denied applicants be able to reapply for a future phase? So yes. The next one is, will each round be the same funding amount? Yep, 3 million first round, 3 million second round, and 3 million the third round. And then Alice, will future rounds of Catalyst funding also have the same project end date, September 2026? Yes, that's correct. And that's because of the state. So we're just following state guidelines. Next one, if applying for a construction project, we know there can always be delays. Is that an issue with the grant completion date of September?
I mean, the funds have to be exhausted by September 2026. Do we understand that? They have to be exhausted. That's where, if you think, if you know, if it becomes an ineligible project if it can't get completed by that time. We want to have people to help you with that, but it's like the dollars have to get spent, or the dollars won't be there for you to reimburse for that construction project.
Okay, Jessica, for the grant writing mentor, will it conduct in-person, Zoom, or phone call? That's up to all of you, what you prefer. When people have reached out asking for grant mentorship, connection or support, I take care of that immediately. That's one of my priorities. So if you reach out today, I will immediately connect you to somebody. And then at that point, you both will work out with each other's schedule what's more feasible.
Any other questions or comments? And like Marie has already said, if you don't, like, if you want to if you're more comfortable emailing us, because maybe it's more private, I can attest that Maria's on it all the time. You'll get a response and you can get writing that NOFA. We never want to be the holdup.
Yeah, and you could always follow up if you emailed me and it somehow ended up in spam and I didn't receive it. Always follow up, and I can go and find the email. But we have one other question. A concern about the video submission, wouldn't it violate the page limit? I don't know.
I mean, I think, right, you could say that that's staff's discretion. I think we just want to be inclusive here. So I would say like a video would be fine, because it's not what's being scored. If the collaborative, who are the judges of this in this case, want to look at it, that's fine. But we understand that people have different ways of communicating. That being said, again, we still have to have the narrative done. That's a great question, great way to parse out, but I'd rather err on the side of being inclusive in the way people want to apply than to shut somebody down.
And then someone in the chat asked for my email. Yes, it's jobsfirst@ocbc.org. Natalie dropped it in the chat. It has become my life. So it is the one email address I'm refreshing and checking. So don't feel like it's some general email that, like 10 people have access to. It's the one email I look at every day. And then, Jesse, you weren't here earlier for the fun part, but I have like the best internet plan on the planet on purpose so that I never have technical issues on Zoom, especially as it relates to hosting webinars or important meetings. And somehow I froze and it kicked me out completely, but it looks like the meeting was still running. So if any of you missed information, or, there's a portion that you're like, could you have repeated that? Email me at the Jobs First email and I will send you any information that I have. But I am uploading this to YouTube today within like the next few hours. I will also send you a follow-up email with all of the information that I shared, the links that were dropped in the chat. So you'll have everything that you need.
Natalie, I think
Next
that
question.
open question is probably for you.
Yeah. So all work needs to conclude by September 30th, 2026. Invoices can be submitted after that date, but work absolutely needs to be concluded at that point. no work can continue after that point.
Yeah.
And then,
then
yes, the reimbursement of that would be in the months followed.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you can read, when you answer a question, Natalie, if you can read the question first. So something I noticed with the webinar is once it's uploaded, people can hear your response, but they don't know what you're answering or what I'm answering. So now I'm getting used to reading the question and then the answer.
Okay, yeah. I'll just repeat the question since I answered it. So the question was, so expenses can be charged up to September 30th, but reimbursement for those final expenses would occur 2 to 3 months later by December/January. Hopefully that answered your question, but please feel free to follow up if it was not clear to you.
Yeah, thank you. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Keith. No, I did not mean to throw shade at my Wi-Fi company. It's just in that moment, I was thinking about all of you and how I just left you hanging for like 3 minutes. Okay, Fernando, you did excellent, Maria. Very professional and easy to understand. Thank you for guiding us. You're very welcome. Agreed. Thanks, Maria. Jesse, okay.
Any other questions or comments? Raise your hand, drop them in the Q&A or the chat. Right. Seeing none, hearing none. Maria, are you ready to adjourn the meeting?
I am very much ready and ready to draft my follow-up email.
Got it. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And
Thank
best of luck
you.
as you apply. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.